Welcome to Tripod Thursday. Today we have Dara Roth Edney, a social worker who focuses on reproductive counseling from Informed Fertility, as well as Glea Timbol, registered fertility nurse from Tripod Fertility. Thank you both for coming on. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh,
exciting. Thank you.
Yes. So let's start off with Dara. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself and your practice?
Sure. So as you said, I'm a fertility counselor, so a reproductive counselor. My background is social work. I've been practicing for just over 20 years, and my whole practice is in the area of fertility and reproduction. So I provide counseling to people who are struggling to conceive and also people who are coming to fertility treatment for other reasons. Let's say relationship status, sexual orientation, sexual identity, or medical conditions that aren't related to fertility, but that make it not possible for them to use their own eggs and sperm, or that they need a surrogate. And so I provide all the counseling required in advance of people doing surrogacy and donation, including assessments for donors and surrogates. I provide a lot of help around decision making, coping strategies, and also dealing with some of the really intense and profound emotions of infertility and loss. I run a number of support groups, and really a big part of my practice is connecting with clinics and helping people navigate what is, for most people, one of the most difficult things that's ever happened to them. And I would add that on a personal level, I was an infertility patient for a very, very long time. And I went through multiple IUIs and many surgeries and total of 6 IVF cycles. And eventually I had my kids through surrogacy. So I have 2 daughters, each of them carried by a different surrogate, who are now 19 and almost 17.
Oh, wow. Oh my gosh. So you do know firsthand what it's like to go through infertility. Yeah.
Yeah, I really do.
Great. And Glea, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background in nursing?
Yes. So my name is Glea. I'm one of the nurses here at Tripod Fertility. I've been with Dr. Zaniki and Dr. Romaine from 2016. And before that, I was also a mental health nurse, focusing more on geriatric care, but really focusing on depression and anxiety. So I have those kind of 2 backgrounds fused together, which I realized over time how helpful it's been with our patients.
Yes.
Glea, that's interesting. I actually started off with geriatrics also.
Nice.
With geriatrics specifically around women and mental health, as they were elderly and palliative. And as I started going through my own infertility journey, transitioned into fertility counseling as I went through my own journey. So that's interesting that we both started in a similar way around caring for people and women with mental health struggles and starting with that population.
Love that connection.
Yeah, that's great. So when you go through fertility testing and treatment, it's often described as, an emotional roller coaster. One day you're feeling hopeful and then excited, and then the next day kind of you're sad and uncertain. What would you suggest, Dara, on how to deal with emotions during treatment?
Great question. So roller coaster is absolutely one of the big things that people talk about in terms of the language that they use around this. I really do think that this is one of the hardest things that people can go through. The uncertainty sometimes feels really quite unbearable. I would say a few things that people can do that can help along the way. One is really get a really good understanding of what your expectations realistically should be for your cycle. So that's a bit of pre-work. So, an example I would say is I've had people who are deeply distressed that they only have, 2 or 3 chromosomally normal embryos at the end of genetic testing. But depending on your situation, your age, like that actually might be amazing results. So people who think one thing is going to happen and another thing happens. Some people don't know that IVF cycles can get canceled, but then if they try again with a new protocol, everything can go well. So then they're feeling good because they're prepping for IVF. It gets canceled and they are completely devastated. Whereas if they understood, look, this is possible and this is how we handle it and this is what happens, then maybe those ups and downs wouldn't be quite as severe. So a big one for me is always around checking in with your nurse, with your physician. What are your expectations? Making sure that they are realistic and that you understand what can happen if things don't go according to plan. So you feel like you have a bit of a bigger picture. I know people often use the language of keeping in mind that this is a season, it is temporary. And I know that that is so hard to feel like it's true when you're going through this, because it doesn't feel like it's temporary. And the truth is, for some people, this experience will be fairly quick, but for some people, actually, it may be years and years. And so when you're in it, it doesn't feel temporary, but it is. And one of the things that sometimes can be helpful to do is to think about other experiences in your life that have been hard, maybe not as hard as this, but that have been hard, and how when you were in it, it didn't feel like it would end. You know, and I think, I don't know what elementary school felt like and how awful it was for a lot of kids in elementary or middle school. That doesn't compare to going through infertility. But if you were a 12-year-old being bullied in school, that was the worst thing you'd ever been through. But we all moved past that. We got through it. It was actually temporary. So thinking about other experiences in your life that can remind you that you can get through really hard things, that can be really, really helpful in terms of managing through it. And I would say making sure to access supports. Counseling supports can be really, really helpful in terms of providing stress reduction techniques. There's lots of concrete exercises that people can do that can help them navigate the ups and downs and uncertainty of fertility treatment.
Yeah, those are very good suggestions. Thank you for that. So we know that it's, very difficult sometimes to take care of yourself. There's little indulgences of self-care that can make the difference and focusing on your well-being. What would you recommend on how to treat yourself over the holidays?
So I would say my favorite self-care is boundaries. So, it is, I think as human beings, especially as women, we are socialized to take care of other people, to think about other people. If we're fortunate that we have good friends, good family, it's hard not to think about them. We want to be able to be happy for them at the holidays, when they have children, when they have good things happening in their lives. But those things can really be very difficult when you're going through something as profound as infertility and loss. And so one of the big things I stress to people, especially around this time of year when there is such a focus on families and depending on what holidays are being celebrated, a focus on children, is part of your self-care is boundaries. So I really encourage people to think carefully when they're using language of, I have to do this, I should do this, I need to do this, and really ask yourself, like, do you? Like, do you really have to go to your brother's house Christmas morning and watch his kids open up all the presents? Like, what would happen if you didn't do that? So really thinking about whose feelings are you protecting and at what cost to yourself. People around you may not understand the need that you have for those boundaries, and that's actually okay. Like, that's okay that people don't understand. It's okay that people might be a bit upset, because the alternative is that none of them are upset, but you are deeply upset and you are deeply hurt. And so this is a time of year where some clinics are closed, some clinics are open, but lots of people are not doing active treatment. They're not having egg retrievals or doing transfers kind of over Christmas week, for example. It is a time where you can take advantage of that to try and catch your breath. You can't build up strength and resilience if you're constantly being knocked down by doing things that cause you pain. So I would say one of the big things is finding ways to say no to things, to show up late or leave early, to do things in alternate ways so that you've got some solid boundaries around yourself. So your focus is on what you need emotionally for your well-being. If you have a partner, what they need. And then you can start looking at what would feel good. Going for a long walk or doing a yoga class or cuddling up with a book or a movie or, having some homemade cookies or some ice cream, and like all of those, getting a massage, like all of those things are lovely, but none of them are going to do a whole lot for you if before or afterwards you're running yourself ragged doing things that you don't want to do and that cause you significant pain.
Yeah, no, I really like that. Boundaries is very important to look at them and assess what's best for you. Great suggestion. Glea, so as a fertility nurse, you see firsthand how infertility affects patients both emotionally and mentally. Can you tell us about your experience?
Yes, thank you, Melissa. So, as a nurse, we are often who patients spend a lot of time with for first-time newly diagnosed patients and patients who've had a lot of losses and repeat failed or unsuccessful treatments. So it's been a really vital role as a nurse to be there for the patients, spend that time with them. For many newly diagnosed patients, it's navigating the new diagnosis as an individual or as a couple, learning new language, new information that's really not something that we are all aware of or can easily navigate through on our own. We have also patients who have unfortunately repeated failed cycles, and if they're coming with a lot of trauma, a lot of financial, physical, emotional stress. I agree that with Dara's first kind of conversation earlier, that educating yourself is really important.
So Dara, how can counseling help when going through infertility?
So great question. Counseling can help in a variety of ways. So sometimes people come to me because they're not sure what to do. So for example, they're not sure if they should start with the fertility clinic, if they should keep trying at home, if they should move from IUI to IVF, if they should move from their own IVF cycle to a donor or surrogate cycle, or they know they're doing donation or surrogacy, but have no idea how to find a surrogate, how to find a donor. So a lot of the counseling work that I do, that my associate Blair does, is actually around information education. So it's not psychoanalysis or lying on a psychiatrist's couch or sort of, I think, some of the things people are worried about. There is a lot of education information. We work really closely with a clinic. So with Tripod, we would work really closely in terms of with a nurse around like what people can expect. So sometimes appointments with me are an hour and a half. So there's a lot of time to talk about what are you afraid of IVF, that you're thinking about doing your 6th IUI. Why would you be thinking about that instead of IVF? What's holding you back? What are you afraid of? And so we have the time to really work through all of those things, highlight some of the things that you're really anxious and frightened about. And then that goes back to your nurse, to your clinical team, who can then help you at the clinic level, helping you get through things that are really hard. We help obviously with some of the significant losses that happen with fertility treatment, and that would include reproductive losses, miscarriages, perinatal loss. So a lot of work around grief and bereavement. People sometimes want to mark a loss but don't know how. So really working through what would be meaningful to you, to your partner if you have a partner. Sometimes it's around working about relationships with people in your life. One of the big losses that happens with fertility treatment is connection to people around you when you're going through ongoing fertility. People do feel out of step with friends who are having children, with family who are having young kids. People can say thoughtless and hurtful things. And so we definitely do a lot of work around how to navigate family and social situations that are so painful to you, how to decide whether to go to baby showers and holiday dinners and things that are really, really difficult. So a good way of thinking about fertility counseling is it can be a really great foundation and partner as you're going through treatment. For many people, this really is one of the hardest things in their lives, and it touches every aspect of somebody's life, from their intimate relationships, their friend relationships, their finances, their sense of identity, everything. And so fertility counseling can be, it can be very active. So not only an opportunity in a safe space to talk about how you feel and to unpack some of your grief and sadness, but also active learning, whether that's about what to expect from a fertility cycle, how to find a surrogate or a donor, to active, proactive stress reduction and anxiety reduction techniques. And I would add that if you look at the research around why people don't have children through fertility treatment, one of the top things is actually not staying with treatment. And in other words, people stop treatment before they would have had a success. And one of the top reasons for that is, interestingly enough, not financial, which is obviously a huge barrier to most people going through treatment. And it's not physical pain, which for a lot of people it is physically painful, but a lot of people can tolerate that. The big thing is actually the emotional aspect of it, that it is so unbelievably, profoundly difficult, and for many people traumatic, that they stop treatment before they would be successful because emotionally it's too hard to navigate. And so fertility counseling in conjunction with good nursing and clinical teams is a really essential part of bolstering up your emotional strength to build that resilience, so you can do the hard things that you're going to be doing if you're going to be doing fertility treatment.
Yes, I mean, I agree. Fertility is hard. It's tough to go through on every level, from the reproductive counseling that's needed, right to the clinic level. But everyone is here to help. All the patients go through every level, even if it's at the beginning, middle, kind of end of their journey. So definitely thank you for coming on. Thank you for answering all the questions, both Glea and Dara. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dara. Thank you, Melissa.
Enjoy your week. Thanks, ladies.
Thank you.